Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now, I bet that title's gotten you curious to say the least. Well, keep watching until the end of the video and you'll understand why you'd be curious. You see, it's all to do with a very distant memory of a game that found massive popularity in South Korea that was meant to be the starting point for an international expansion, a Dragon Ball MMO off of the back of Kai, Dragon Ball Online. But it sadly never got a Western release and closed 3 years after debuting. Oh well. But there is a grassroots version called Global, which is knocking around, doing its best to translate the original missions and quests into English, so if you're intrigued, go check them out. Maybe download it yourself. But what's the point of this video though? Well, it's for the purpose of filling in the blanks for some people, exploring the wealth of content for the game, and honestly for people who might not be inclined to spend hours trying to find the version of the game and then playing yet another game to find out information that they could find in one video. Besides, there's already the likes of Kakarot to spend hours passing through, and that's readily available. Well, here you go. I'm doing it for you. How did we come up with this? Well, sometimes when we're looking for a video topic to bring to the channel, we tend to look through the pages of the DB Wikia for random pages. Now, hear me out, it's not as lazy as you think. And very often we do realize how little we really know about Dragon Ball Online and its characters because they turn up out of nowhere. Look at Android 8000, we've talked about him before and it's like, wow, I thought Android 8 was very much derivacious of Frankenstein's monster. But there's always something about it that surprises us. And sure, we know the basic premise of the story for Dragon Ball Online and where it's located in timeline, and that Piccolo is basically Billy No Mates, except for Dende, as none of his original friends from the original timeline are around anymore. But wait, why should I even care about a game that doesn't exist anymore? Well, you should, since Toriyama basically oversaw the project, wrote content for it, a lot of it, and gave his blessing for it to be considered a genuine part of the overall lore of the franchise, going all the way to age 1000, 250 years, hence from when we first see Goku and Bulma meeting up. And you should care because Toa and Mira first made their appearances in this game, so you Xenoverse fans should definitely care. And even now, 12 years or so after it first booted up into the computers of many people, some of the elements of the game of Dragon Ball Online are being repurposed for the likes of Super Dragon Ball Heroes, other games, and maybe even the mainline series in some ways. So Toriyama struck retrospective gold here. He doesn't really have to do much work anymore, he could just pluck things out of nowhere from that game. And most people would be none the wiser. And think about it, it makes sense because there are so many things you could utilize from that creation, and so many interesting characters you could remake into the present day continuity. We could simply showcase those weird individuals for you for the purposes of maybe a few yucks, giggles and guffaws, or maybe the occasional bemused stare. But here's a few that got our attention. Listen, Masako, Dragon Ball is already pretty balmy at the best of times, so what makes you think I'm gonna be surprised by anything that this game could come up with? You wanna retract that statement, buddy? Yeah, up first here we have General Bonn, the figurehead leader of the Red Pants Army. Yes, pants. No, not your American pants, the British underpants, innit? And these folks here, well, they're certainly not pants. Basically, the Red Pants lot were founded by General Bonn in age 991 to restore the rights of his home nation, and he also felt a personal endearment to the Red Ribbon organization of old and decided to pay homage to it in his own special way. And also he had help from outside factors too, but we'll get into that in a sec. Likening ribbons to undergarments? Then again, some of the more scanty garments have ribbons on them. I'll stop myself before I tell you to stop it. As for Bonn himself, he is a humanoid bison, most likely a beast man, or more accurately a beast after generations of beast men, the whole Animorphaline thing. We all know who was the original company that distributed all that Animorphaline back in the day, a couple of centuries ago, around the world, and made bank on it. But the Red Pants' goal is, like I said, world domination, to found themselves a nation for simple animal-type earthlings so that they may roam free, their own animal kingdom. Oh, that's Disney evil, isn't it? Literally. You remember me saying that online elements are being used in other properties since online got axed in 2013? Well, Bonn here is no exception. He appears in several Heroes installments, and even some Western fans could recognize him from the Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission game for the Nintendo Switch. The game that came out with loads of hype and fanfare, and I even got excited about it as being the first hero games for Western markets, and then fizzle out into obscurity with mediocre scores. You see, folks, this is why Heroes doesn't work in the West. Nobody really gets what it is. Dragon Ball Fusions, that's a better game. There really isn't that much about these guys that are wildly different from their original model and archetype. Except that it is very hilarious that Jiro's clone, yeah, really, but are you honestly surprised with what he got up to? And an android replica of Commander Red, named bizarrely Android 9, decided that a giant bison guy in red underwear and a tactical vest was the best guy to get behind for the job as leader, and went with his desire to form the Red Pants Army. Yeah, really? That Bonn would be a perfect leader for this new dawn of the Red Apparel Army? I do wonder what phase that Jiro's clone was going through when he came up with that idea. Remember his trucker hat phase? The original one? Questions for later though. There are a few more characters though that we would like to share with you. Another interesting character is Wriggle, and we would like to wriggle ourselves into this topic. So Wriggle here is the leader of the Guard Troops, a member of the Frog Face race. Yes, that is what they're called. I guess Toriyama wasn't really trying hard that day. The Guard Troops, or they're otherwise known as the Honor Guards or Frieza Force Remnant, are elite personal guards of Frieza and, most likely, Cold prior himself. They are kinda like the Emperor's Royal Guards from Star Wars, but yet they aren't that good considering that they had no idea who had actually offed their leaders, completely and utterly and conveniently unaware of the existence of the Dragon Team, despite realizing that they went to Earth and they didn't come back. Who did it? Oh, it was Hercule, the strongest human. Which is why they didn't go and try their luck on Earth until age 820 when Hercule passed due to old age. And they then got handed by Krillin's new turtle school. Oops. So much for that Herculean effort! They are mentioned though in the Xenoverse games, this particular bastion of Frieza's forces, when Frieza mentions that the player is worthy to join their ranks. We even see them briefly in the Broly movie, where they are referred to as the Honor Guard. But back to Wriggle himself though. Well, in age 820, like we mentioned, he led a full-scale invasion of Earth, which ended with many victims on both sides, and had left Mr. Frogface himself leading the Frieza Force at the end of it all. Whew. Well, it worked out for him then, didn't it? He then had a short-lived alliance with the Timebreakers. That's Towa and Mira's faction, by the way, but yeah, he quickly turned on them, sensing more opportunities instead of just sticking to what he had, settling. Because he'd already become the leader of Frieza's force, so that's pretty good. But yeah, he does act like Frieza because he just can't leave well enough alone, can he? He also attempted to loot from the sacred land of Korin whilst he was on Earth, but was then stopped by the player character of Online as part of a quest. Oh, how the mighty fall, being quest fodder. Now, obviously, we don't know how much Frieza will be around with us in his revived state for the subsequent series and stories and movies of Dragon Ball Super, but with so much stuff going on in Online and now making its way to other properties and series and games, who knows? Maybe we'll see this Wriggle guy at some point in it. After all, the timeline is only about 40 or so years away from that age 820 landmark. Perhaps Wriggle is already working for Frieza's force in some capacity, maybe in a more junior role. He might just wriggle his way up into seniority. Or get there through sheer dumb luck. Okay, speaking of things from Online making its way into more mainstream titles and properties, this is the character that actually inspired this video to be made in the first place, provided the main inspiration for this list, since they are the most compelling and fascinating examples out there, as well as the most connected to the Dragon Team proper. Meet Sho here. She is an ex-Capsule Corporation worker, who then went on to betray them, later choosing to work for Paella, Pilaf's descendant. Now, okay, here is where we might be showing a little conjecture here, but we feel it's well-founded based on what we have now. Okay, we know that Online came out in 2010, before Battle of Gods was even a thing, but is it possible that Sho might be, part of Vegeta's bloodline? This isn't as far-fetched as you might think. After all, a lot has happened since Online came out, and things have been firmly established in the lore since then. it could easily be added. I mean, come on. Her appearance is a major contributing factor to our thought process. She's clearly supposed to be Mai's descendant in looks and actions, and we know that she is a brilliant scientist because to work for the biggest company in the world, you gotta either be very good at what you do, or maybe perhaps have a familial connection to get in. Is it possible that she might be related to the prince in some way? Granted, she won't have the prince knocking around. He and Goku died shortly after they left Earth in age 804 to train as hard as they could before they grew too old to do so, but perhaps some of his mannerisms carried on? Yes, of course, it's not fully confirmed yet, but it's just fun to speculate. But we can understand why there might be some doubt with this one, as the idea of Trunks and Mai being a thing wasn't a thing at the time of the game's release. But we don't know how long Toriyama actually spent planning this game, as well as planning a potential new series and lore for Dragon Ball, because he is known for both planning and yet not planning stuff, acting off the cuff. In short, you never know with him, so anything is possible. The longer we look at her though, you can actually start to see a little bit of Bulma in her too. Oh boy. Right, let's talk about our partner in crime, the new one, Paella. We already know that Pilaf's kind do reproduce in the traditional sense, since we know that Pilaf had a mum. She appears in a funny short sequence in Dragon Ball, so that means that our imp boy will find himself an imp girl at some point, and they will then go on to have some imp babies, since Paella is basically a slightly taller version of his ancestor. The appearance otherwise is the same. Just meditate on that previous thought though. Them getting close. And Paella though is basically Pilaf 2.0, though in his mood. Which is a shame in a way because he's just basically a carbon copy. But he was made for a game, so I guess we'll lighten up. But the main difference though between him and Pilaf going is that a robot priestess gave him a prophecy in which to act, promising him that he will rule the world, instead of Pilaf just wanting to do it because. So, good for you, buddy, I guess. You had a much more justifiable purpose for being who you were. Then there is another character, who is not a descendant of an existing character exactly, but more like a spiritual successor for them. This here is Nalak of the Dark Namekians clan. Now these Dark Namekians, ooh, these could be the most compelling additions to any future series, I can assure you. Much more original and unique than the likes of Lord Slug and Bad Namekians. It's pretty funny because we don't actually see him in the game though, but let's say that regardless of that, he still makes quite an impact in other ways. Named after Naraku, one of the Japanese terms for Buddhist interpretation of hell, and of course that one character, what was in Inuyasha in it, Nalak the Dark Namekian was created thanks to the manifestation of evil in the hearts of Namekians. Similar in a way, but on a grander scale, that the thing that Kami and King Piccolo went through to split. This was a much more deep-rooted and more widespread purging though of negative energy amongst Namekians. He hatches out of an egg in age 972 and creates the group named the Dark Namekians, based off of his image. Now this right here is his egg. Yeah, these Dark Namekians are pretty big. It's implied that this boy is huge, and maybe some more of his allies and descendants would be tall as well. And Piccolo was tall himself, so that's saying something. And those guys have some really sick designs to boot. These folks look genuinely malicious and not like they want hugs or will get by napping, meditating in the forest and drinking loads of water all day long. This here is Baralika, for example, basically their version of Nail. Their village, as well as Baralika's design, look like it doesn't really belong in Dragon Ball though, but maybe it would be better suited in one of Haverock's favourite games, Elder Scrolls Morrowind. Wouldn't you agree? It feels a little bit out of sorts for Dragon Ball, but not in a bad way though, it's different. And honestly, the whole aesthetic of Nalak's minions is probably one of the greatest things to have come out of Dragon Ball Online to date. We're actually kind of surprised why this hasn't been used in other games yet. You could easily have them turn up, having existed in the depths of the universe waiting for their time to strike. You know, after that original drought on Namek which diminished their population, some may have escaped because of it, using what little resources they had left, and then evolved into more maligned and spiteful iterations of the otherwise peaceful beings. Come on, it could easily happen. They had the technology back in the day, and space is pretty big. They could easily hide. We really wish that if the Heroes or Xenoverse universe were going to continue in future games, or DLC perhaps, that we would then see how the big Nalak himself looks when updated for the modern age. But there is one more character that pays homage to a classic one, in an unexpected way. Beware the dreadful and terrifying Captain Bacterian! Yeah, not exactly the most original of updated characters, but we're naturally assuming that this isn't the same Bacterian as the original one, considering the fact that this guy here is a pirate instead of a fighter, over 200 years in the future, and apparently has some margin connections as well, if you take a close look at his belt. He is a huge force on Paella Island, the place where the Budokai takes place, terrorizing the populace and gathering energy for the Timebreakers. He is also allied with Captain Taylor, who is a shark with legs. Moving on. Well, there's certainly a lot of wacky, funky stuff online, isn't there? And it's a shame, really, that there is so little info available about it that you can easily access. Once again, though, props to the makers of Dragon Ball Online Global for doing their best to localize the game. Seeing that the lore presented tends to pop up in Xenoverse, though, and heroes, and even the main story on occasion, it does give us some hope, though, that maybe some of these elements and designs, more of them, will be used in future media, especially Dark Namekians. Please let the Dark Namekians turn up. Anyway, we hope you enjoy our more lax video, with us just marveling at the fascinating oddity that is Dragon Ball Online. Check out my original timeline video of the subject though, if you want to have some more detail on the matter. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!